Hi everybody, I'm James Stavridis, the Dean of the Fletcher School of Law and Diplomacy, and as the holidays approach, finally, everyone has a little more time to read a good book. So I thought I'd kind of close out 2017 and talk about 5 really terrific books that I've had a chance to read this year. I want to start with 2, one fiction and one nonfiction, and this is really an extraordinary accomplishment for the Fletcher School of Law and Diplomacy. Every year, the National Book Awards pick 5 finalists in fiction, 5 finalists in nonfiction. These are like the Oscars of books, by the way. And this year, the Fletcher School, of the 5 fiction, had 1, and of the 5 nonfiction had 1. Fletcher graduates represent 20% of the top 10 books as selected by the National Book Award Committee. Pretty extraordinary. So let's kick off with that novel by Elliot Ackerman, who is a wonderful Fletcher graduate, former combat Marine, former CIA officer, White House fellow, now a very accomplished novelist. This is his 2nd novel, and it's called Dark at the Crossing. And it is a dark novel. It's set on the Syrian-Turkish border, and it follows the story, the narrative of a young man seeking to do something very just and very right. It doesn't always go well, but that's true life, and it's a heartbreakingly, beautifully written book. The nonfiction book is called Killers of the Flower Moon. The author is an expert at taking nonfiction, but making it read like fiction. Set about 100 years ago, in the 1920s in Oklahoma, when members of an Indian tribe who own the land there are gradually being assassinated in order to get their land. The young FBI steps in to try and solve this crime. It's an absolutely brilliant nonfiction book, which I highly recommend. Well, let me stay on nonfiction for a moment. A very reliable biographer, known to many of you, I'm sure, is Walter Isaacson. He wrote a biography of Stephen Jobs. He wrote a biography of Benjamin Franklin. Most recently, this year, he wrote a biography of Leonardo Da Vinci, and it is a knockout. The book itself is beautiful, full of illustrations of paintings and sketches from Da Vinci's life. And what he unpackages in this book is the kind of startling revelation that Leonardo da Vinci, of course, was a genius and an incredible artist, and we could all point to the Mona Lisa as a good example of that. But the greatest quality of Leonardo da Vinci was his curiosity. And that, Walter Isaacson would tell us, is a thread that you can pull through the great innovators of our time, from Stephen Jobs to Benjamin Franklin to Albert Einstein, all the way back to Leonardo da Vinci. Absolutely terrific biography, and of course unpackages that Renaissance Italy in which da Vinci lived. Let me go back to 2 novels to close things out. One is by one of my favorite writers who was writing back in the 20th century and continues to write beautifully today into his 80s, and that is John le Carré. Some of you will know his works, including The Spy Who Came In From the Cold. He wrote about Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy, the whole Smiley series of novels. So he's out with his latest, and he says his final novel, we'll see, it's called A Legacy of Spies. And it takes the Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy characters, George Smiley, and brings them out of the Cold War and back into the present as some of the things they did in the Cold War come back to haunt them. It's a kind of a courtroom drama that never actually makes it to a courtroom. It's a beautifully realized novel of the collision between espionage and a world of transparency that we live in today. So the last novel, and one I really enjoyed for its quirkiness as well as its subject matter, is called Exit West by Mohsen Hamid. It is an absolutely knockout book, again set in a kind of a mythical version of Syria, never actually named, in which the characters find that to escape they only have to walk through a magical door, and suddenly they're in a refugee camp. Again, not named, but probably Greece, and then they open yet another door, and they suddenly end up in a European city, probably London, again not named. It's magical realism as a style of writing, also a National Book Award finalist, and an absolutely heart-rending, almost mythological look at Syria. So there's 5 books I highly recommend. Above all, I need your recommendations so I can do some holiday reading myself. Thanks for taking time to listen and to support the Fletcher School of Law and Diplomacy. All the best.